Hello, welcome to Human Tech, a podcast about the intersection between humans and technology. My name is Guthrie. I am here with Susan. Hello.
Hi, Guthrie.
How are you doing today?
You know, I'm good. It's supposed to be autumn, but it's 80 degrees in Wisconsin, so...
Oh, yeah, I'm making a horrible mistake. It's 70 degrees and perfect in Chicago, and I'm inside recording a podcast. But I had a dentist appointment today, so...
you were out, but I don't know that counts.
Well, yeah, but also, now my mouth is all... I need to eat, and I can't eat because they just clean my teeth.
You can eat.
Yeah.
You just want you want that clean feeling to last as long as possible.
Well, also, if I ate, it would taste disgusting because it's like the mouth cleaner. And...
Yeah. All right. Yeah, we don't need any more details, Guthrie.
My teeth were perfect.
Well, that's good news.
That is good news, isn't it?
Yes, everyone wants their podcaster to have really good teeth, so.
Okay.
I'm happy about that. So, we can move on now. We've picked a topic today.
Yes, and you could announce the topic, and then I do just want to do a quick 5-minute segment on the Apple keynote.
Oh, okay. Well then,
all
right. Well,
announce the topic, and then
I think we're going to transition.
We will.
To talking about.
I'm not going to do a whole deep dive Apple thing today.
Okay. We're going to talk.
I will save our poor listeners
from hearing you expand forever about the Apple show.
Yes.
All right. Well, once we talk about the Apple show, then we're going to go into one of our, I tend to think of it as UX nerdy kind of topics. We are in the middle of editing, and we're going to be publishing soon a new revised version of our course on detailed user interaction.
Old
design.
One was fine, but needed some sprucing.
Yeah, we wanted better video, better audio.
We've gotten a newer camera.
New content, some new content.
Lights, yeah.
Better examples and things like that. So we're in the middle of, we've recorded everything and we're in the middle of editing it all. And of course that means that all those topics are on the top of my brain. And this is really, down in the weeds of user interaction design, which is going to be an interesting challenge to talk about because basically you're talking about the design of things that are, a lot of which are visual, and we are an auditory medium in podcasting, but other people do it in their podcasts on radio, so I think we can do it. So we're going to talk about, specifically we're going to talk about forms, the design of forms. Really exciting stuff. I think it's exciting, but I don't know, Guthrie, you may not be that excited.
Forms are cool. Everyone uses forms.
Okay, that was not said with a lot of enthusiasm. But okay, so we're going to talk about forms in a minute, but you want to take a few minutes and talk about Apple.
Yeah, so we don't usually do this.
What?
Well, I do it all the time, but you don't usually watch a whole lot of kind of tech announce. There's the tech event, and they invite everyone out to the big mega complex and that they have out in California. So
I don't usually watch them live.
Yeah.
And this time we kind of watched it live together, which was...
Yeah, I pulled you in. It was their big annual iPhone announcement at the beautiful new Steve Jobs Theater. So
yeah, what was kind of weird for me about watching it was earlier that morning I had an interview with this woman from Newsweek about the new iPhone, but that was before it was announced.
Well, I mean, she was smart. She knew exactly.
She scooped it. All right.
Well, she knew it was coming out this week. In that Newsweek piece, she actually talks about what they announced.
So, what do you want to talk about the Apple announcement?
I would just like some a little UI opinion.
Oh, really? Like what?
So they announced a new watch.
Yeah.
Which probably what they wanted to all along. The watch is now, it'll have LTE, so before, let's say you wanted to like open the Lift app on your Apple Watch, the phone had to create a Bluetooth connection. Sorry, the watch had to create a Bluetooth connection to the phone and then access the phone's internet, and then it was a whole thing. And now
Yeah,
it can
I
just
thought it
use
was
its
pretty
own.
funny that
Yeah.
this was a really big deal. Oh my God, the watch can do things on its own. And I was like, well, yeah, that took a long time.
It did for a lot of reasons. But it's hard. It's hard to have enough battery to have a device that that does LTE, and also sticks around. The biggest problem is that the carriers are going to charge like $10 a month to have it as a secondary device. So it's going to be pretty expensive just to like use. Anyway, so there was the watch. Are you high on the watch yet?
No, but I don't wear a watch.
Yeah.
Any kind of watch.
I've been pretty down on the Apple Watch for a long time. I think I'm starting to come around, just because if they have, I think in like maybe 5 years, it'll be pretty cool, so like basically Apple kind of created they created their kind of logic board. And so basically, if it was in a Mac or an iPod or a phone or a laptop, whatever it was basically just like a different size power version of the same thing.
Yeah.
So like if you open up a new MacBook laptop, there's a stick that's the size of an iPhone that has the processor and which has the internal graphics card and the memory. It's just like it's a stick that does everything that you need to do. And so it's kind of interesting that this is their new segment. Anyways.
All right, but I'm not sure that in 5 years okay. Well, I have my own opinion about what the next device needs to be.
Well, that's fine. But you don't think you're not seeing this like.
No.
Okay. They I think they're selling a lot of them.
Do you want me to tell you one reason why?
Sure.
Because I think that augmented reality, mixed reality, whatever the heck you want to call this thing, is going to be really big. And so you're going to want a device. The big thing is going to be something with, a camera that lets you face it out towards the rest of the world. And I don't want to be, it's on your wrist. You got to be like, it's not going to be, maybe it'll be an Apple Watch type device, but not on your wrist. It'll be in clipped to your pocket or pinned to your lapel or something. But, I'm going to lift my arm and turn my wrist so that, I don't know. I mean, you saw in the Apple demo, they, made a call to the woman who was, what was she, windsurfing or something?
She's paddling in the ocean.
But she's paddling in the ocean, but she has to keep lifting her arm towards her mouth to talk, right? I think they're slowly changing the use case, which is from the greatest device in the world to a glorified Apple Shuffle, which is it's a fitness tracker / music player, and I guess you can make calls and you can call 911. And I think there's a real value to that. I mean, I bet you they sold so many of the little shuffles. I just need something small because I don't want to drag my big heavy phone around while I'm working out or swimming or whatever. So I think there's so I'm starting to get on board. New Apple TV, blah blah blah. I'll skip right over that. So the new iPhones, big UI decision. So the UI of the future, no home button. Right, no buttons, all screen.
Yeah. So now we live in different worlds. You have an iPhone right now, that has a home button. I live in the Android world, and so we're used to the 3 buttons at the bottom. The middle one being the home button, that it essentially does the same thing that the Apple
so you have a
does.
physical button?
No, No, I have a Samsung Galaxy S8
So
Plus.
you have no buttons on the
Well,
front.
I actually didn't have any buttons before. Interestingly enough, I had a Nokia, a Nexus 6 before my S8 Plus, and that one also did not have a physical button. They were part of the screen. They were like, anyways. So I haven't had physical buttons in a while, but it's the same. But so the middle button on Android does the same thing as the Apple button. So you press it, it goes to the home screen. You long press, it opens up the Google Assistant. So that you just the same way you long press, it opens up Siri. But then in Android, there's the change app button where you click it and it shows you all your apps.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think you get to on Apple by double pressing the home button.
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't know. People use that. But then there's the all-important back button, which is like the most important button. Like Android users use the back button all the time, every day, 24 hours a day. Like it's the way we navigate through.
And what
app.
does it do?
That's a good question, Android users. What does the back button do? Because if you're in, so it does different things based on different apps.
Mm-hmm.
So generally it means either back but also zoom out. So if you're in Chrome and you hit back, it goes to the page you were on before the page you're on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
If you're like in the Reddit app, for example, back will go. So if you're in a comment section, clicking back will go back to the main page, right? It kind of brings you back up, back up the chain.
Sure.
So you're diving deep. But if you press back again, it will close the app and go to the home screen.
Mm-hmm.
It basically is like continues to go out and back and out and back and back and out and out and back. And it's sometimes not consistent, but it's the very, very important in Android because it's how we Android users move about the world, is with that back button. At least I'm assuming everyone does.
Yeah.
So it's very instinctual, right? So when I'm on my phone and I need to do something, I hit the back, I'm hitting the back button or the home button. So if I want to switch apps, I usually just go to the home button and then tap on the apps on my home screen. So I'm just constantly at the bottom, pop, 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 and it's a one kind of hit.
Yeah.
So Apple, on their new version of iOS, has no buttons. There is at the bottom. There's like, if you want to minimize an app, you pull it down into the bottom.
Yeah,
and
they
then
have
if you wanna
Instead of tapping, there's a lot of swiping and going on. Right? As I recall from watching that video.
What I saw someone in a video, they were pretty worried. So let's say you're you're reading the news, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're scrolling. So if you're holding your phone in one hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're scrolling with your thumb.
Maybe. Okay.
Right?
Okay.
You're scrolling down. Would it not then pull up from the bottom? You'd have to be very careful because if you got towards the bottom and you push to scroll down, it would minimize your app.
Right.
So I'm not sure. I mean, maybe you have to like start like at the very bottom corner. Maybe it's really good about identifying that, but I don't know. So what are your thoughts about
obviously
main navigation buttons?
Okay, well, I haven't used it, right? The new iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't used an Android phone very much. So I don't know that I'm a great person to ask. So I would have to experience it. Of course, I'm going to give you the answer that we should test it. But I am concerned, in general, it would be better to do to tap, to touch, to push with a finger than it is to swipe with a finger in general. swiping, it's a bigger gesture.
I watched that video. I mean, you watched the video too, right?
Yeah.
It looked fairly complicated.
I mean, I guess, you can get used to it. But yeah, in general, to have your finger in the right place, to swipe in the right way, I mean, it's not a big deal, but it's going to be...
It's going to confuse a lot of
it's going to be
people
more
who are
complicated.
not tech savvy out there.
Well, and even after you know it, it's still not as easy a gesture. That's what I'm saying. If you think about in our natural world, non-phone world, what do we do with our fingers, right? We touch things, we tap things, we push buttons. We're used to that. We do some swiping, but we don't swipe, You swipe a lot of things. Why would you swipe things, You move a grain of salt on the table from one place to another. I don't know, it's like that's just not a natural gesture. And I know you can say, oh, well, we're getting used to it, and we're all used to pinching and swiping and all of that, and we kind of are.
Well, the difference is this isn't actually a swipe. When I think swipe, I think laterally. It's a pull up with your finger.
Yeah, to me I understand. I guess you're right. It's not technically a swipe.
It's different.
In terms of mechanical movement with your finger, it's a swipe. It's just a swipe up rather than a swipe across.
But it's certainly but yeah, I just see a lot of people who, I mean, iPhones and Apple have, we'll just say, a lot of there are a lot of people who are not the most tech literate who ask their kids what to get, and their kids were like, here, have an iPhone because it's easy to use. And I just see a lot of them in an app and they don't know how to get back to the home, because there's no button. There's no how do I get...
that will definitely throw people, at least back? Initially. The question is... so it's an interesting question about whether the new iPhone will be the same, the people with the old iPhone will upgrade, or will this be the point where they switch to an Android because it's not really, it's different than the iPhone they're used to, or because... as you said, their tech-savvy friend or child or whatever says to them, I don't know, why don't you get an Android? At least I can explain it to you what to do when you get stuck.
Well, I have a theory.
What's your theory?
I have a theory that Apple is going all in on AR.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It was a big part of their keynote, and getting rid of physical buttons, or even touch buttons of any kind, is a move towards, and with the face recognition, it is definitely a move towards, visual space motion gestures.
Well, and the other thing is that with the emphasis that they have on the emojis and the selfies that they talked about on there, they might be going after. I'm not going to say whether they're going to be successful or not. They might be going after a younger demographic. They might be trying to switch their...
They've always been going after a younger demographic.
Yeah, maybe. Anyway, I think that I think, and I have to say,
I love emojis.
I agree with their decision about that AR is going to be big. I think AR is going to be really big. Really, I think they finally have some of the software things they needed. The kits are out and all of that. And I think that's going to become a very big thing. In fact, and again, this wasn't our topic for today, but it's kind of becoming our topic. I think, how I'm always talking about, the next big thing, and it's always social, and right. The next big thing, if someone wants to go do it, I'm sure people are working on it now, and I'm sure I'm going to kick myself for not doing it myself. Is social apps that use AR. That's going to be
You just need an AR I mean, everyone's just waiting for the right AR platform. So, Apple's trying to be that platform with their new AR. I mean, they announced an AR platform, literally. So, my thoughts in 30 seconds on the new iPhones.
Yeah.
Expensive. I mean, the most expensive one is almost $1,200 USD.
Really? It's more than 1,000?
The iPhone X, which is the iPhone 10, which is a confusing naming thing, but starts at $1,000. And if you want the higher storage version, it's $1,150 before tax. So it'd probably be about $1,300 after. It is a ton of money. So very expensive. It's hard. I mean, it's tough because the features that they rolled out are basically the same as my Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus that I bought last month for $650. So it's almost half the price. It has edge-to-edge display. It actually has smaller bezels than the new iPhone X.
And they're not paying you to say these things, right?
They're not paying me. It has facial unlock, which I don't use. It has an OLED screen. So, however, I got 15 more seconds. The camera will be great. Oh, and glass front and back and wireless charging with a headphone jack and a SD slot on the Samsung. So nothing new on the hardware side. But in Apple's credit, I'm sure the camera will be fantastic, and they have somehow, and this is maybe the most important thing, the new benchmarks on their new chip. So Apple makes their own chips, and that's what kind of makes Apple special. Google's actually going to start doing this, so that'll start getting really interesting. Right now, all Android phones use Snapdragon chips, which are made by Qualcomm, which everyone grumbles about. Which they're great. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're wonderful chips, but like somehow Apple always, because they make their own, they just blow the doors down every year. And this new chip is so much faster in single thread performance than anything you can put in an Android phone. And that makes it very battery efficient and very fast. Because single thread performance so Android phones are equal in performance as an iPhone because Android phones have more cores. So if you do multi-threaded workloads, that's great. And in theory, that would be good if you had like a bunch of apps open and running. But the vast majority of the time on phones still, it's all about single thread. Like I'm opening an app, I just need to take a picture. It's like how fast can you do that? And the new chip in the iPhone, like the iPhone 7 and the 6S, completely flies. It's like 50% faster than competing Android chips, and it's going to make the phone feel super snappy.
I'm going to remind you of something.
Because sometimes that's all that matters.
I have a birthday coming up.
Yeah.
Someone could get me a birthday present. Just think about it.
I don't even know what that means.
You could buy me a new iPhone.
You don't even know what phone you want.
Just buy me the most expensive $1,200.
Doesn't have a headphone jack.
Just buy it and buy me a bunch of Bluetooth, and we'll figure it out. Okay. No, I do.
It has glass on the back and the front. If you drop it, it'll shatter into a trillion pieces.
Yeah, I have a problem with that too. Okay.
Anyway, so those are my thoughts on the iPhone event. I thought we should have a commentary on it. I was curious to hear your thoughts on not having buttons.
All right. I like buttons.
Okay.
Speaking about buttons, let's talk about forms.
What's a form?
Well, now that's a good question.
Wasn't it like once upon a time at the forum or something?
What?
Isn't that a Broadway show?
No.
It's a play?
You're thinking about something about a forum, not a forum.
I know. Wasn't that weren't you in that show?
No, is not. I did do a lot of musical theater, and that was not one of the forms, one of the shows I was ever in.
I thought that was one of the shows. I can't remember going to that.
It wasn't me. All right, what is a form? Wow, that's a good question. I'm looking in this. I'm looking in this book to see. Oh, look, it says introduction. What is a form? So as we talk about forms, I wanted to mention one of my favorite books on forms. And there's not a lot of books just on forms.
Well, it's funny because this is it. So we were actually talking about this a while ago. Especially because we're redoing this course, and we had a client recently who wanted us basically to do kind of basic UX consulting-y stuff, and most of this stuff was settled in like the 90s, like by the 2003, like this was all like it was gospel, and it's like the same. It's new software and new platforms, but it's like the same questions and the same problems and the same answers for forever. I just find that interesting.
It's true, and
people have been doing forms. I mean, for forever.
Well, okay. If you want to go all the way back,
right? Like this is not new.
I used to give speeches. Okay, there was a professional organization. I'm not going to be able to remember the name, and it might still be around. And this, professional organization, right? Like, UXPA or, for designers, or, right? I mean, we all have professional organizations that we can be members of. This was a professional organization for people who designed forms. But this was not electronic forms. This was paper forms. And it might still be around. Because you got to understand, forms, right? Tax forms and application forms and, request forms and expense forms. Forms have been around for a long time. We can probably go back to like Roman times and find forms on papyrus or something. That was maybe the Romans didn't use papyrus, but forms have been around for a really long time. And I'm going to be honest and tell you that I was around and working and in the field of, usability / UX. Wasn't called that at the time when we were making the transition from paper forms to online forms, because if you go far enough back in computer screen design, you go back to a time when there weren't screens, right? When you were communicating and it was just single lines being typed, and so there were no online forms. So then we got to the point where we could now show a screen full at a time, and which meant you could put a form online. And this was a very big issue. What do? Do you take the paper form that you have in paper that you've been working on and perfecting for 10, 20 years in some cases, in terms of what things should be called and how they should be aligned on the paper, right? And what kind of font and typography you should use, and should you group things together and put boxes around them? This was a big deal with forms, designing good forms on paper. Do you now take that form and do you try and replicate it exactly on the screen? Do you do the same fonts? Do you do the grouping the same? Will it fit on the screen? These were really big questions, and there was a whole, there was one school of thought, which is if you have a form that works well on paper, replicate it as exactly as you can on the screen, which you couldn't do, by the way, because the screen resolutions weren't good enough, right? So you couldn't I mean, initially, when you were designing a form, you couldn't draw a box around anything. Do you know how we drew boxes?
I do.
How?
You used you made boxes by having little characters.
That's right. Little X's or whatever. Yeah.
Which is so funny because you know what that is?
What?
It's just a glorified emoji. It's like it's like using characters in the ASCII code, which is just the standard, UTC.
That's right.
Which to uniform, whatever text characters, which is to create images.
Yes.
To create two-dimensional images.
Yes.
The internet has been doing forever. They make swords and penises and big jelly guys.
We're really going far afield, and but yes, absolutely. So this, and I'm talking about this was all pre-internet, right? This was just a form that would appear in software, not on the internet. This is pre-internet. So, I
mean, internet software too.
And then, then the screen resolutions got better, and then we got graphical user interfaces, and then we could draw boxes, and then we could do scrolling, and so you could have a long form because people could just scroll down and see the rest of the form, and so we got kind of better and more sophisticated at forms, and then we came up with all kinds of standards and best practices about the kinds of controls that you should use on the form, and where should big conversations, big arguments about, where should the labels be? Should they be left justified? Should they be right justified? Should they be on top? Should they be in the field? I can remember sitting around with teams at large corporations, because we were coming up with style guides or standards documents and having heated arguments about whether you use a colon or not after the label, whether the field label should be in bold or not, whether it should be left justified. So these are all questions that, were very, very hotly debated. And some of these things about forms, I just kind of assumed we'd settled them all and everyone knew, and that was that. Until, recently, I find myself, you and I were in this meeting, and we're having this big conversation because we're evaluating these forms for a client, and it seemed all new to them, which was like, I was like, oh my gosh. I've come full circle. We're coming back around now. The fact that, there is best practice, some of which has changed perhaps a little bit as we've gotten more sophisticated. And as we've now, you can have a form on a desktop screen or a tablet or on a laptop or on a phone, right? And now we have to think about how does that work on a phone, and certainly I still think I run into lots of forms on a phone that were obviously not, designed for the phone. Whoever designed this, I've even run into, interestingly, some forms that were obviously designed for the phone, like they're using controls and so on that you wouldn't have if you were using any type of computer. So they were designed for the phone, but they obviously never tested it because it doesn't work on the phone, and so they didn't realize that the thing that isn't working right. So forms are still important because you asked, what is a form? And there's not agreement on this definition. Can you believe that?
Of course I can.
Well, let me ask you. If I said to you that a form is a screen or part of a screen in which the person or organization that owns the form that is showing it to you wants to get some information from you, or you want to give them some information. So it's a way of you communicating information to, whatever the website or the software or whatever is. So the idea is that you're going to be putting in data or putting in information. Do you agree that that's a form? Can you think?
Yes.
Can you think
Yes.
of a form in which that?
So I mean, my I'm a little jaded because my definition of a form is going to come from a tech perspective, from a dev perspective.
Oh, and what's that going to be?
Well, so form is simply any time that the data is being sent back to the server, or at least sent back to the application that's running, usually the server. So it's because there's the HTML has like the HTML form script, so it's less of an abstract concept and more of a programming.
But if I just
situation.
All right. Let me ask you a question.
So you could have a form in which a user doesn't input any data. You could have like an invisible form.
Okay. Yes. See, I'm going to say that's not.
Right,
Yeah.
Right.
So from a user interface perspective,
right.
I'm going to say that's probably not a form.
Right.
So I think I was started to talk about this book I like, and I don't think I got to finish it. So there's a book called Forms That Work, and for any of you out there who do design forms, if you don't know this book, I highly recommend it. It's by Caroline Jarrett, who's actually a friend of mine and a wonderful, amazing usability person in the UK, and Jerry Gaffney, who I believe is also from the UK. And it is a great book. And, I don't remember exactly when it's written. It's been out for a while, but extremely relevant for any kind of form you might be writing. And one of the things Caroline and Jerry say, and I think that I don't know if they were the first people to say this, but anyway, I'll give them credit for it, is that a form is a conversation. And I think that's a really good way to think of it. So if you want to design a form and have it be well designed, then you want to think of it as a conversation, because if you're having a conversation with someone, right, and it's a conversation that works, that's not annoying, a conversation that is effective or efficient or pleasant or something like that, you're not in that conversation. You wouldn't have someone, for instance, ask you a question that you can't answer, right? Or ask you a question that makes no sense and you don't understand what they're asking, right? Or ask you a question and then give you some choices, but the one that's true for you isn't even an option, right? Or a good conversation with someone, they wouldn't ask you information that you're uncomfortable giving, or they wouldn't ask you information where you would say, really, you need to know that? Like, how is that relevant to what we're talking about, right? Or before they have the conversation with you, they feel like they have to give you, like a 5-minute introduction of how to have the conversation, right? I'm going to give you instructions about how we're going to have this conversation. So if you think of it as, it's a conversation, I think that that's a really good starting point, and that's the point they make. But then from there, they go into, great detail about all these things like buttons and layout and grouping and wording and best control to use and all of that. So it's a really good book. Now, if you want to get a book, I would recommend that. Of course, I'm going to have to put a plug in for our new course that will be available in, a couple weeks probably, right?
Yeah, or hopefully less than that.
Yeah, which also is a great way to learn. If you don't want to read a book, you can take the course. So I just think, like I said, I still see forms that are poorly designed, and I think that it's important to think about, what are the forms and how you're doing it. So do you have, Guthrie, Any examples of a form you've used recently that you thought was particularly good or particularly bad?
Oof.
Putting you on the spot.
There are so many good forms out there. Forms these days are pretty good.
Yeah, some of them.
A lot of them, they're much better than they used to be.
You know what I think? If you're talking about,
it's everything has a login, and the login form has become so generic, but it's like a good type of generic.
Yeah, but I think the places where you see bad forms are the companies, medium and even large companies that have to, whatever they're doing, they have to create their own form, someone's applying for automobile insurance or health insurance.
Whenever I've faced this at our own website as that I code, just because it's hard because you don't have maybe complete control over your platform or complete control about how things look, and so you're trying your best.
Yeah, and then sometimes you end up with a form that isn't great, right? Mm-hmm. All right, let's see. Can I quiz you? I love to give you quizzes.
Quiz away.
Okay. So, let's see what kind of quiz I want to give you. Let's see what I'm going to do. All right, here's a quiz. Well, let's use one of the examples I gave. Should you put colons after field labels, yes or no, and why or why not?
No.
You're going to say no, and why is that?
The form speaks for itself.
What does that mean?
Well, because you put the colon if it was, for example, a blank space on a piece of paper to know that that's where you put to separate the title from the thing. But you're saying if I have a label and I have like a text box, like let's say it's last name, right? Yes.
And then I have a text box where you're supposed to type in your last name. Right?
Yeah.
You're saying I don't need a colon after last name. Is that right?
Well, where's the... Yeah, that's just what I'm going to go with.
All right. Now, what about if after you fill in your this data, you have last name, first name, address, blah, 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 blah. And now later on, I want you to review your information to make sure we've got it all right. And so I'm showing you your form, but now there's no text boxes.
Then I'm going to go with yes.
Okay, so you would put in the colons if there was no text boxes and take them out if there are.
Just a shot in the dark. Yeah.
Right.
The idea being that colon is an indicator of where to put in the information, but for me, if there's a text box that's in a box, that's very clear. Well, now where's the header? I'm assuming the header's on top of the text box.
What do you mean header? Oh, you mean the field label?
Yeah, I'm assuming it's on top.
Oh, no, it's to the left.
Oh. So it's in line.
Yeah. So are you changing your answer?
It's in line. Well, I still would. My instinct then is to put a colon because if it's, I'm looking at just a form now, and I'm just thinking how it would look if there wasn't a colon, and I feel like you need a separator if it's on the same line.
So, you do need some kind of indication. Maybe it could be that the label's bold and a darker font or something, but yeah, typically a colon is the way to do it. So, I think that I think I'm going to agree with you that in terms of if it's to the left and I know I'm going to agree with you that if the label's to the left and it's showing you the information, not collecting the information, then you need something so people know where the label ends and where the data starts. And a colon is the easiest way to do that. I would probably say, well, heck, if you're going to put the colons there, then just put them everywhere, even when you're showing the text boxes. It's probably not a big deal either way. And I would also agree that if you have the label above the box, you probably don't need the colon. But I think the most important thing about the colon decision is to make the colon decision and then to stick to it. And everybody understands how you're going to do it, and then that's the way you do it. And you don't deviate from it. You're very consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. That was pretty good. You did pretty good on that.
Thank you.
Let me ask you another question.
Okay.
You have a series of questions, like, have you ever served in the military? Just a bunch of questions that are yes/no questions. Okay?
Yeah.
Should you do them as an option button with, yes is one button and no is another button, little round circle that you click? You either click yes or you click no.
Right.
Or should you do it as a checkbox?
You would want to, so for yes/no questions, you want a checkbox.
So you don't want to do yes/no questions, you want to do a checkbox instead.
It's still a yes/no question.
But you do it with a checkbox rather than, you don't click yes or no. There is no yes or no on the screen.
Correct.
It's just a thing that says, I have served in the military.
Yes.
And then you check it.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to say, in general, that probably works. I think you have to, the danger, there's a danger. What's the danger of doing it that way? You know?
No.
Well,
okay, I do know.
Okay.
It depends if there is no danger if the radio buttons. Are they called radio buttons?
Option buttons, radio buttons. Yeah, they are actually called the same thing.
The radio buttons are not pre-selected. If the radio buttons have a pre-selection, then you might as well go with one box with a check mark. But if the radio buttons, it makes sense if the radio buttons are not pre-selected, and then you can't continue until you make a selection.
Yes. So see, that's the thing. If the answer to the question is really, really critical, like, based on how they answer that question, that determines what you're going to show next on the screen, or that determines whether they're going to get a bunch of extra money, or right. I mean, this is a really important question. Then you may want to do it as a yes/no with option buttons and nothing defaulted, so that they are required to answer the question. Right. The problem with doing it as a checkbox is people could just have missed it and not check the box, and you think that means that they purposely didn't check the box, but it might have just been that they didn't notice it. And there's a real tendency for people to not thoroughly read any things on a screen.
Obviously.
And
surprise.
So if by skipping over it, that has a really bad consequence for them, then, you don't want to do it that way. And there are actually some legal type forms and some medical type forms where by law, depending on the country you live in, you can't do it as a checkbox. You have to have them specifically fill that in and say yes or no, or, make a choice.
Yeah, that's weird.
Did you know that?
No, that seems ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, no, I know I've worked on forms where legally we could not do it as a checkbox. We had to do it as a yes, no. Off the top of my head, I can't give you an example of what that is, what that does.
Okay.
that does occur. Okay, so you use the term radio button, and I said, yeah, it's the same thing as an option button. So do you know why they were called radio buttons?
Oh, I have no idea. I'd actually be curious to know.
You don't know why they were called radio buttons? How fun is this? This is fun.
It doesn't make any sense.
Well,
I haven't used a radio in years.
Okay. Well, when you did, what were there buttons on it? You don't even know.
I guess I use my car radio.
Tell me about the car radio.
It has buttons.
Okay, but you probably, I don't know if you've ever been in a really old car, or maybe you saw this in a movie.
I mean, I've used old things.
Well, this comes from car radios. So, basically car radios. Regular radios didn't really, some of them might have done this, but it was all car radios worked this way at one point or another. This was how you changed the station. There wasn't a dial. You would press in a button, and you got this station or that station or that station or that station, and you did it by pressing in the buttons.
No.
There was a dial, but you preset.
I was gonna say, how you have.
I'm sorry, I'm doing it wrong.
Turn the dial.
Well, I wasn't around back then, so I'm just doing it based on.
Okay.
No, I was around. Yeah, but you could preset the buttons, and then you would push the button in, and it would switch to that radio station. But they were mutually exclusive.
That's stupid.
What's stupid?
They didn't exist. It's not like okay, so we call like a smartphone a phone because it was the same thing as like on a wall because you used to take calls, and it's not really what it is anymore, but it still exists. But like radio buttons have not existed at least for 50 years, 40 years. It's been a very long time since they had giant circular push in and you could only select one at a time buttons.
Yeah. So what?
So I don't understand why I just don't understand why they're called that, because the HTML spec probably was invented after those were already like phased out.
Well, you called it that.
That's just because that's just what I was. That's what they're called when you put them in online. That's dumb.
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. That's just.
They're not. The thing is, because the reason it's dumb is they're not buttons.
They're not buttons?
They're not buttons.
Well, we call them option buttons. It's still called buttons.
Yeah, but I don't think it's a button. If you press it, it doesn't do anything.
So what do you want to call
them? Circle selectors.
That takes longer to say and spell and write out.
Radio buttons, circuit selectors. It's literally the same number of syllables. Like choice selector. It's not bad. Though I like circular selector better because choice selector could indicate a drop down. Or you could call it a push selector. I'd be okay with push selector.
Oh, come on. What does that mean? I wouldn't know what that means. Well, a command.
You push it to select it.
A command button could be a push selector.
You want to select an option, you push it.
All right, maybe I'll think about that. I call it option button.
It's troublesome because there are.
So there are so many more things we could talk about with forms, but I think we're running out of time. But we can do another. We might do another.
Yeah, we'll do forms part 2. The most exciting topic that ever has existed. Forms.
I don't know. I like forms. There's so many things you can talk about with forms, and obviously, based on what we've been seeing lately, people may not know what the best practice is and why it's best practice, and why having a form designed a certain way makes it more usable. So we can definitely do forms too. I would like to do that. It's still, until we go, full voice and don't have stuff on screens, I think we're going to have forms for a little while yet. So still important, and might be really important if it means the difference between people getting tax money back, or getting into college, or signing up for your service, or right. These things can make or break an interface.
Hey, one more big tech news.
Oh, you got more tech news? Yeah.
Yeah,
What's
just
that?
a small one. Very under the radar.
Yeah.
But very important. Yeah. In Chrome version 64, which will be coming out next year. I think we're at Chrome version 61 right now, so there's a couple to go. Chrome will be banning code that allows videos to autoplay when you visit a website.
That's a very big deal.
It's a very big deal, and no one's talking about it. So especially if you think on your phone, right? You go to like annoyingnews.net,
it's horrible.
And some video starts playing with audio. Autoplay will be disabled on YouTube, or sorry, it's on YouTube, on Google Chrome.
So do you think the advertisers will be unhappy about that? They might be.
Well, it's not. A lot of those are not advertisements. A lot of them are like news stories that like have an advertisement in the pre-roll.
Yeah, I know.
But it's not. Maybe, but I think it's. I think for the long-term health of the internet, I think it's a good thing.
So why do you think they did it?
Well, various browsers have been using their weight as a dominant browser to muscle change in the industry for a while now.
Yeah.
It's happened before. Think of pop-up blockers.
Mm-hmm.
Google's disabled a couple things here and there throughout their history. And so then if you want your application to work for people using Chrome, which is now the largest internet browser, you have to play by their rules. And there are because there are standards. There are the HTML standards that most browsers completely support. But then there are the extra things that browsers support that aren't quite, HTML, but are, generally standardized, and each one does it a little differently. And, there's like WebGL, and Google has their own various like instant platform for games and stuff. I'm not going to get too crazy, and I don't know enough myself, but they've used this platform to disable certain things in the past, and this is another big example.
Well, I'm all for it.
Cool.
Hey, Guthrie, it's great to talk to you.
Yes, indeed.
And we have upcoming, I believe next week we're going to be interviewing someone. We're going to have a guest.
Excellent.
So I'm really excited about that.
Cool.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening. If you want to get a hold of us, you can reach us at where, Guthrie?
info@theteamw.com.
And we'll let you know when that new course is ready.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.